One American researcher named Thomas Stanley spent 30 years surveying millionaires. Not bloggers, not celebrities, not heirs. Ordinary people with net worth over $1 million, built by themselves. He found a strange thing. Millionaires don't look like millionaires. They wear cheap watches, drive a used Toyota, live in middle-class neighborhoods. Luxury magazines are read by their neighbors, who have not a cent saved. Out of this paradox grew the most cited work on wealth of the past half-century. The main finding: wealth does not depend on income. It depends on 8 habits that repeat in almost everyone who built it alone. Before unpacking these 8 habits, one number. Stanley has a formula that separates real accumulators from fake ones. Take your age. Multiply by your annual pre-tax income. Divide by 10. By his data, that is the expected net worth of a person your age and income. If your real net worth is twice that, you are, in Stanley's terms, a prodigious accumulator of wealth, a PAW. If half that, an under-accumulator of wealth, a UAW. The uncomfortable part: more than half of high-income people fall into the second group. The surgeon, the lawyer, the small business owner. Those who earn a lot, but spend almost all of it on new status cars and big houses. 20 years of this life, and income climbs while savings stay flat. Counterintuitive, but exactly what a sample of tens of thousands of American households shows. A reasonable question: what if you just hand someone $1 million? Maybe habits follow money. David Cesarini answered, an economist at New York University with unique access to Swedish lottery data. He tracked people who won large sums over 10 years. What he found flips the popular logic. Lottery winners did not go broke. The money dissolved slowly. Many kept most of the prize. Their happiness rose and stayed above baseline. But no new financial discipline appeared. They worked a little less, parked the money in low-risk bonds, and lived as they lived. Sudden millions did not turn them into Stanley millionaires. Habits come before money, not after. That is the first thing to understand before the 8 habits below. The same pattern repeats elsewhere. Financial advisors in America have long watched people who got large inheritances. By one such study, about 70% of heirs spend it all within one generation. 90% within 2. And this is for families with tens and hundreds of millions. Money transfers. Habits do not. Without built-in discipline with large sums, no heir status saves you. The same financial mass that earned income for the grandfather disappears at the grandson over 10 to 15 years. That is what makes habits the foundation of the whole money conversation. They outlive the money itself. Habit 1. Live below your income. Sounds like a platitude. Underneath, Stanley has a number. Sarah Stanley Fallaw, his daughter, continued the research and published her data in 2018. In her sample, 70% of millionaires spent on housing, cars, clothing, and status items substantially less than peers with the same income. Substantially meaning 20 to 30% below the national average. A person with the same income as the neighbor spends a third less on visible consumption, and 20 years later has 10 times the net worth. Not stinginess. Indifference to being judged by your car and your watch. That is the financial behavior that compounds the gap. Evolution makes this hard. The brain is built to constantly compare itself with the nearest members of the group. 100,000 years ago, ranking higher in the tribe meant more children, more chances of surviving. Today, the same mechanism makes you buy a second car when the neighbor got a first. Living below your income is refusing to play social comparison, not fighting the impulse, stepping around it. Psychology has a name: hedonic adaptation. After a raise, within 6 to 12 months, happiness returns to the previous level. The raise became the new normal. Spending grew to absorb it. Bigger car, cafe instead of cafeteria, pricier clothes. Documented in many longitudinal studies. Stanley caught millionaires by a simple sign. After a raise, they did not change lifestyle. The raise went not to consumption, but to investments. One respondent earned about $200,000 a year, lived in an area averaging $60,000, drove a 10-year-old car, and saved the difference in index funds. 25 years later, his net worth crossed $4 million. The neighbor with the same paycheck, who moved to a richer district, swapped the car, and took a bigger mortgage, by the same age had minus $200,000 in debt. Hedonic adaptation stopped on purpose. Habit 2. Read 30 minutes a day. A word on the source, because there is speculation around this number. Tom Corley, an accountant from New Jersey, over 5 years surveyed 233 wealthy people and 128 low-income people. Not a university scholar, small sample. But the numbers repeat in other authors. 88% of the wealthy in Corley's sample read at least 30 minutes a day, nonfiction. History, biographies, industry publications, psychology. Of the low-income group, 2%. The other well-known figure, investor Warren Buffett, in open interviews names 80% of his work time on reading. Reading alone does not make you wealthy, but it builds what researchers call pattern recognition on long horizons. Someone who read 200 books on economics spots market behavior early. Someone who read 300 founder biographies sees mistakes before making them, like compound interest in information. Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, said a line in one interview quoted thousands of times. "I have never met a truly smart investor who does not read constantly. Not one." Munger described his own method. He calls it a latticework of mental models. The idea is simple. Each discipline, psychology, physics, biology, history, gives a few central models that explain most of the field. Read across a dozen disciplines, and a lattice of models forms in your head. Facing a problem, you apply not one familiar template, but cycle through 10. That is the cognitive gap between the person who reads a lot and the one who does not read at all. Not the volume of facts, the way reality is processed. A newer figure. In 2021, an executive search firm reported on 1,200 top managers of American companies. Average reading, 50 books a year, not counting industry press. The median American adult reads 4. A 12-fold gap. Again, not the correlation that the wealthy are smarter so they read. A habit that builds a way of thinking, which, over 20 years, produces very different career trajectories. Habit 3. Stealth wealth. This habit annoys bloggers because you cannot show it on camera. Stanley has a term, stealth wealth, hidden wealth. Half of surveyed millionaires never paid more than $30,000 for a car in last decade prices. A third buy only used. The most popular brand is not Ferrari and not Lamborghini, but Toyota. Most live in homes bought 30 years ago. Sounds like downsides. In fact, upside's hard to see. An expensive car is not neutral. It demands maintenance, insurance, premium fuel, parking in expensive places. Not a purchase, a package upgrade of the whole life. A big house, the same. Pricier heating, furniture, maintenance. When a millionaire picks an ordinary car and an ordinary house, he is not denying himself pleasures. He is cutting dozens of package costs, each invisible alone, together half the income. Habit 4. A narrow social circle. Fallaw has a number. Millionaires in her sample spend on social media on average 2.5 hours a week. Not a day, a week. The average American, 14 hours a week, almost 6 times more. On political news, under an hour a week, 10% zero. This does not mean millionaires gave up on information. They gave up on shallow information. Social media is built to hold attention in short doses. Each time you open the feed, the brain gets a tiny shot of dopamine for a post, a like, a funny picture. Neutral on their own, but they train attention in a rhythm of 30 seconds. After 2 hours in the feed, it is hard to sit down and read a book or analyze a spreadsheet. Not because discipline is missing, because the brain is hooked on short stimuli. Millionaires do not muscle through willpower. From the start, they spend that attention differently. Parallel to that, a social rule. Cal Newport, computer science professor at Georgetown University, in his 2016 book introduced the term deep work, a state of focused work without switches, where 1 hour produces more than 8 hours with interruptions. Newport analyzed interviews with top scientists, investors, programmers, and found a common pattern. They guard work time the way others guard money. Close email until noon, switch off the phone, set days without meetings. The same logic in Stanley's Millionaires. Long blocks of focused work, not broken by social networks and messengers. Whoever can work 4 hours today without interruption, 10 years later has very different results than the one who did the same with breaks every 8 minutes. Studied separately, after each interruption, attention returns in 23 minutes on average. 3 short interruptions in an hour eat the whole hour of productivity. Habit 5. Think in decades. Stanley has an observation easy to test. Ask an ordinary person about a financial plan. They answer in a horizon of a month, at most a year. Ask a millionaire the same, 10 to 20 years. Not a difference in speech. A difference in how the brain builds the future. There is a direct physiological basis. A longitudinal study from a Stanford group showed that in people able to make decisions on a horizon of 10 plus years, brain imaging lights up the same zone, the medial prefrontal cortex, as when they think of the present self. In most people, this zone dims for the distant future. The brain literally does not see the future self as self and saves resources for a stranger lucky in 20 years. In those who think in decades, the zone stays just as bright. So saving and investing are not a sacrifice of the present self for a stranger, but a deposit to the same self. Habit 6. A partner with the same values. Perhaps the most underrated habit. Stanley separately surveyed wives and husbands of millionaires. In 90% of cases, the partner shared the approach to money, not necessarily keeping the books, but agreeing on not spending above income and not chasing status purchases. In a couple with the same values, doubled compounding. Both save instead of one saving and the other zeroing it out. Financial advisors in America log a category of financially incompatible couples. One partner a prodigious accumulator, the other an underaccumulator. Movement from one side is not enough. What one saves, the other buys on credit. 10 years of that, and the pair's financial result equals one underaccumulator alone. Same numbers, more conflicts. In one longitudinal marriage study at Kansas State University, 5,000 couples were tracked over 15 years. Money disagreements are the single category of conflict that predicts divorce at a statistically significant level, regardless of income. Not sex, not children, not in-laws. Money, and not the amount, but the mismatch in how to handle it. A wealthy couple with different financial habits breaks up as often as a poor one with different habits. A shared system of money handling in marriage is not a technical detail, but a load-bearing structure. Habit 7. Sleep by your chronotype, not by fashion. Now, against the most popular advice in success books. The idea of waking at 5 a.m. is a myth. I am not making this up. In 2026, The Conversation published a review gathering chronotype data from the past 20 years. Chronotype is the genetic leaning to an early or late peak of activity. It barely changes over a lifetime. Forcing a 5 a.m. wake on a late chronotype leads to chronic sleep loss, lower cognitive output, and over the long run lower pay, not higher. Among real millionaires in Stanley's sample, there are early birds and night owls. Overlap on wake hour 0. What overlaps? 6 to 7 hours of quality sleep and a steady routine. Not the time, duration, and regularity. Habit 8. Control through systems, not willpower. The last habit, and in a way it ties the others together. Fallaw asked millionaires a separate question. What takes you the most effort? Most answered, not earning, but not spending. Holding yourself back from an extra purchase takes energy. Energy is finite. So millionaires do not rely on daily willpower. They build systems that decide for them. Automatic transfer of 30% of pay to a brokerage account on payday. You never see that money. Credit cards with no limits at all, or strictly one card with a fixed limit agreed in advance. Purchases above a set amount, only after a day of waiting. Each system is one decision made once instead of 1,000 decisions every day. Psychologists call this structural decisions. The best discipline is the one that does not require discipline every day. Richard Thaler, 2017 Nobel laureate in economics, has direct proof of this idea. In his program Save More Tomorrow, he offered workers to automatically route every pay raise into a retirement account. Not part of current income. Future raises the person had not yet received. Before the program, the average savings rate was 3.5%. After automation went live, within 4 years it climbed to 13%. No persuasion, no new financial literacy programs. The decision was simply moved from a daily point to 1 point in the past, and the data shows a threefold rise in savings. That is a structural decision in pure form. A similar effect on the country level. The United States switched to automatic enrollment in retirement plans at higher. By default, you are signed up, you can opt out. In countries with the old system, where you sign up by hand, about 40% of workers participate. With automatic enrollment, above 90%. Same country, same income, same literacy. The only difference is the default. And the whole gap, between 40 and 90% coverage, is the effect of one structural setting. Millionaires apply the same logic to private life. Set up the world so the right thing is the default and the wrong thing takes effort. These 8 habits look simple, but their power is not in each one separately, in their joint effect. Any one, a few percent a year of financial efficiency. All 8 together work as a multiplier, and they do not kick in within a year or two. Stanley noted in the book that the average millionaire in his sample was about 50 years old. Not young founders in hoodies. People who held the same lifestyle for 20 to 30 years. That is the core nerve of the whole story. Wealth is not an event. It is the result of accumulated behavior. Curiously, other cultures put the same idea in almost the same words. Japan has an old household budget practice called kikibo, literally, the household ledger. Each expense is written by hand into a notebook split into 4 categories: needs, wants, growth, surprises. Japanese women have kept these books for over 100 years, since a women's magazine first published it. The effect matches Stanley's Millionaires. The act of regular recording changes behavior. You see it, you spend less. Germany has the word Sparsamkeit, literally the willingness to save, not stinginess in a negative sense. A cultural norm of placing long-term reliability above short-term comfort. The houses where Middle Germany still lives were built by grandfathers and passed to grandsons, because the culture remembers the same idea. Think in decades. A rare case when large American research, a Japanese household practice, and German daily culture all point the same way. Habits come before money. Saving is not a one-off effort, it is a daily background. And the most important part, it does not depend on income. Stanley underlines in his data, his sample of millionaires contains people from all pay levels. A schoolteacher who saved $1 million over 30 years, and a surgeon who saved nothing over 20. The point is not the money that comes in. The point is the 8 ways money is handled every day. On this channel, working methods of raising effectiveness, backed by research. If this money topic was useful, there are many more breakdowns here on habits, thinking, and productivity, all built on data. Subscribe to keep seeing new methods that work over long horizons.